Welcome to How Can I Keep From Singing, a podcast that explores the power of singing together. Each week we interview a different song leader or thought leader about why this activity has held such sway over humans for so many years and what you can do next, maybe, to join this artistic tradition. My name is Stuart Stotts. I'm coming to you from rural Wisconsin, and my guest today is Catherine Roma. Catherine Roma is an American choral conductor and activist whose work has helped shape the women's choral movement in the United States. She founded landmark ensembles, including Anacrusis Feminist Choir in Philadelphia and Muse, Cincinnati's women's choir. Over more than 4 decades, she's created vibrant choral communities in churches, colleges, prisons, and wider public life, using music to cross boundaries of race, class, gender, and sexuality. Her leadership, grounded in feminist and Quaker values, continues to inspire choirs dedicated to inclusion, peace, and justice. Catherine, welcome to How Can I Keep From Singing?
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate that so much, and it's great to be with you. Thank you.
You have an amazing history of singing with people in, as the introduction says, a whole variety of settings. Today, I want to focus on your work in prisons, but maybe you could begin by just talking about your own background, perhaps when you were a child, or how did you come to singing before you became such a public figure?
Well, I went to a Quaker school, K through 12, and that really did shape me. I was born and raised Catholic and became a Quaker. I'm a convinced friend when I was 17. That Quaker education was really important to me, and singing in a choir was very important to me there, and the power of that. I went to Europe with a choir in high school, and that was really important. And then the singing experiences I've had have been really important. But, as a young person, I studied piano. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe that's what I'm going to do. But when I reconciled that I was a people person and, sitting at a piano 8 hours a day was not my style, and being with people and creating things together, creating music together, and especially the voice. I'm very interested in the power of the voice, the power of people singing together for change. Usually I call myself a choral activist, just letting people speak the words that empower them and empower us all. And share experiences, lived experiences of people. Choral music, I don't know, voices, it just took me. That's where I am right now.
Was singing a part of the Quaker tradition when you were in school?
I'm a convinced friend, and I'm from an unprogrammed meeting, which means we sit in silence until the Holy Spirit, or until whatever that connection is, it makes us quake and speak. So I went to a Quaker school, and singing was really important. And so I got such good training there. And it was a contradiction in a certain way. But Mary Brewer, the conductor at Germantown Friends School where I went, she was an amazing conductor and wanted to use music to bring people together. It was after the Second World War. I think there was a lot of emphasis in going back to France, and we did that. It's a contradiction in a certain kind of way. There is singing in Quaker schools, and that was really important. There's not singing in unprogrammed meetings. That's an okay balance, though.
So you come out of high school and maybe college. How do you then begin to move towards community choirs of the various types you've worked with?
I started a women's choir because, if you remember, 50 years ago, I started Anacrusis in Philly. I wasn't hearing things that were my experience. I wasn't hearing songs that expressed who I was, what I was going through. I started a women's choir to do that, to investigate. I did a lot of research. Women were not singing in public, if we're talking about the Western classical tradition, because boys and men covered women's voices, and it wasn't really until the 19th century. Brahms had his own women's chorus, and So women's voices were beginning to be heard, and music was being written for women, but not so much. There's a huge tradition of men singing and men and choral music for men. Not so, although it's changing, for women's voices. Had soprano, alto, tenor, bass, mixed choruses at the top. You had boy choirs, then children's choirs, and at the bottom of this hierarchy was women's choirs. And women's choirs sang music that boy choirs and children's choirs sang. So it's a fascinating history that's really been changing over the last 50 years. It's a matter of, can you bring sound through your body? You change when you run sound through your body. It changes you. And to sing things that are relevant to your life, relevant to women's lives, and of course all people's lives. There's this universal kind of music that can be sung that really just brings people together.
I want to talk with you in another episode about women's choirs in greater depth. Today, however, I want to focus on your work in prisons. So somehow you got from doing women's choirs and your own classical training and so on to working in prisons. How did that happen?
Well, I started teaching at a Quaker college here in Ohio, Wilmington College. I started as an adjunct. I got my doctorate in 1989, and I'm looking for full-time jobs, obviously. I reached out to Wilmington College, and there were no jobs or even adjunct positions on the main campus, but they said, we have a prison program. I said, oh, how fascinating. And so at that time, Pell Grants were available for incarcerated people. So Wilmington College had probably one of the best programs in the state of Ohio. They offered an AA and a BA degree program. So I started in 1990 and thought I had died and gone to heaven. I had people who were hungry to learn. They read books. They read many books. I could bring in things and they just scarfed them up. That was really exciting. So in 1993, I did get a full-time job at the college, and my full-time job was only in the prisons. There were 7 of us in 3 prisons. That was our main site. But in 1993, when I became full-time, they knew of my choral background and they said, why don't you start some men's choruses? 2 of the prisons were men's chorus and 1 was women's, but it was quite a distance away. So I didn't start a choir in the women's facility, but I started choirs in the men's. One of them lasted. I was at Warren Correctional with Umoja, a choir I started in 93. We went till 2014. I didn't have a background in choral music that men would sing, but I soon learned. And then men started encouraging the men to create and write, and I was hooked. I was hooked in prison education in general, but doing choral music in prisons, and I've been doing that in 6 prisons since 1993, doing choirs in prisons, and I love it.
Give me just a little bit of a picture of what that looks like. You come in, maybe looking at the beginning anyway. I'm sure it's changed. You come in, you're a woman, you've got all these men in front of you who are getting ready, who've said they want to sing anyway. How do you proceed? What's that look like?
Umoja was the first choir I started at Wilmington, and Umoja did 3 CDs. When there is a college, when there is a structure, it's way easier, I have to say, because they then, the people who are administrators at the prison, do a lot of the work. Like if I wanted to bring in resource people, if I wanted to bring in coaches, I can do so much vocal work with the men. But the difference when a male teacher comes in and a male vocalist, there's lots that can be done and lots that can be taught. I can do some of that, but the incredible impact of having a man work with men's voices is really good. So I always do that. But so if I did bring in somebody when there's a structure, then I could say, okay, this person was Holly. She was a administrator there. And I'd say, Holly, I want to bring in, let's say, John Wright. So she would do all the paperwork and I wouldn't have to worry about a thing. So it was easier when there was a structure like that. I went in as a very new person with my first men's chorus in 93. And I just tried to figure out who I had in front of me. What were the voices like? And it was a 1 credit fine arts course. And I had to petition to try and get some people who were maybe not in the college program into the chorus. Especially, there was one particular person who was fabulous. So I was really grateful they allowed me to do that. But you have to figure your way. So I knew I had, at that time, mostly African American men. So I would bring in my friend Bishop Todd O'Neill. He's a minister and a fabulous musician. He came in and did some gospel music. And then, you just try and build and figure who you have in front of you. And then is there music that can fit what we're doing? Who the people are and what do they want to do? I couldn't just all of a sudden come in and say, and have some idea, because I had to see who was there.
What have you found works repertoire wise? And I'm certain, as you say, that changes depending on who's in the room, but there must be some certain consistent things that you find over time working with folks in prison to sing.
I was at a place called Marion Correctional for about 5 years, and the time was ripe. I mean, I don't know how it happened. It was quite miraculous. We did Hamilton. We did 23 of the 46 pieces that Lin-Manuel wrote. It was the complexion of the group, the hip hop artists that were in the group. We had done Les Mis. We had done, a friend of mine, John Wright, who I mentioned, brought some of his singers who he coaches on the outside and brought them in, and we created something akin to a really wonderful production of Les Mis. Then the guys had all sorts of confidence, and they said, and they were taking a theater course called Theater of Conviction. Jesse, who is the director of that group, we merged and did Hamilton, and it was quite spectacular. We had about 750 people come in from the outside. It was just before COVID. Because it was so successful, we said, let's do more performances. And we had 5 sold out performances for May of 2020. You know what happened. Now, totally different group I'm working with right now who say they want to be a spectacular choral ensemble. I do not have hip hop artists. I have 1 or 2 maybe. But I have some guys who have sung in classical ensembles at the college and university level. And so I'm blessed with this choir of about 24 guys at Chillicothe. And we just did a full choral concert. We called it Now We Are Three because I've been in there 3 years. They did 14 songs. 4 of them were by people who inside, really amazing works. And we did some gospel spirituals. We did classical repertoire or, contemporary music being written by African-American composers, both male and female. And then some, what they call, traditional music of the canon, the soprano bass canon. And I was able to bring in about 60 of my friends into the concert, and the men in the choir were allowed to bring in their families. So that was just last week, and I think they did a spectacular job. And to throw in what else is happening, I got a cold email from somebody I did not know in North Carolina saying they had seen a lot of my work online with men's choruses, and maybe they'd like to do a documentary. So that is in the works right now. And it's really a story about how these men it's called NIA, means purpose, NIA Men's Chorus, how they come from different places, different units. They don't really run in the same circles, how they came together to form this choir. And the documentary will show their backgrounds, their different musical backgrounds, how important music is to them in their lives. And there'll be some music that they've created just as individuals that'll be seen. So I'm thrilled because I've never had such a group that was so focused. They come every time, they bring their music, they bring, and they're attentive, and they want to grow, and they want to be good. And so it's a wonderful and quite unusual thing to be happening inside a prison.
You're listening to How Can I Keep From Singing? And my guest today is Catherine Roma. can imagine that this is an amazing opportunity for folks, especially because music is often so important to people who are incarcerated. Can you talk a little bit about some of the specific impacts you've seen of people you've worked with in choirs, and also this idea of people creating music for you to sing? I know we've talked about that a little bit. You've shared some pieces with me. A powerful outlet for people, not only to create, but then to have their work sung by a group.
In the current prison I'm in now, Chillicothe, up until a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, the men on death row were housed there. And so the deputy warden said, would the choir like to sing for the men on death row? And I said, sure. There was no question. And the guy said, absolutely, yes. So we had to sing unaccompanied music because we couldn't bring in a piano. So we had a couple of unaccompanied pieces we sang, and I taught a couple. And we went over there. After that experience, one of the guys wrote a piece because he was so moved and so struck and so changed, and I'm sure he was vibrating. So he wrote a piece called Redemption Way. I got it arranged. He had the outline and the text, the lyrics, and melody lines and some ideas for harmony. And I sent it to a friend, and I said, can you create an arrangement of this? And so it came back, and he sent an AI version with the voices and the accompaniment. I played that, and the guy said, "Oh, wow! I mean, this. Who can we sing this for? Who can we? This is yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we can sing it." So we had a talk about death row and what it would mean to perform this. They started to learn it, and I said, "What am I going to do?" They thought they couldn't perform it for their peers, and what would the administration say? I called a nun, a friend of mine in Cincinnati, who I've been at demonstrations with, peace demonstrations, and all sorts of things, Sister Alice Gerdeman. And I said, we have this incredible piece, and the guys don't know where they can sing it and get a reception that they would like. So she said, well, the first Friday of every month, we have a death row, a vigil for men and women on death row. And it's at 2:00. And if you have a recording, we'll play it. So that's what happened. We learned the song. The guys thought it was a pretty amazing song. And a lot of conversation, of course, came out of it. And then I said, well, we have this opportunity. And so then all of a sudden it started spreading. They wanted to perform for their peers. They wanted to perform it for other people. And it's an incredibly powerful piece about, let's call it Redemption Way. Every man has dignity. Every man has a soul. The words are quite amazing, and it's a very powerful song and moves people whenever they hear it. To the men on death row, to the men on death row, you are loved. You're never alone. Here is our prayer for you. Step into the light and know that we are here. We will pray for you. We will fight for you. You have worth to our God. You have purpose right here. You're valuable to God. And then, of course, it says, we have a new name for death row. From now on, we will call it Redemption Way. It's so this is the kind of thing that they're creating. That was just one of the 4 pieces by guys. And so then it's very important too that the men then are singing something written by one of them. That's so powerful also. Especially another young man has written a couple of pieces. One is To Be Seen, and it's about, he expresses lived experiences of really everybody who has been in prison. But not just so. So it gets more universal. There's a more universal statement. So I don't know. It's ever enlightening and expanding me. People say, oh, how can you go? Some people say, how can you go in there and work with these hardened criminals, these savages? As a Quaker, I go in and know that there's that of God in every person. And I don't look up their crimes. I've never done that in the 30-some years I've been doing this. Anyway, so that's a little bit about one of the songs that I think has been so powerful.
I recognize this deep connection you feel and the recognition that you feel for the people that you're working with, of their humanity. I'm wondering how you deal with that in your heart, that to walk back out of the prison, to know what's going on in there. My guess is that it's not easy as a human being to recognize the injustice of the system and the connections you've made with people.
Oh yeah, it stays. I mean, I don't just leave the prison, and exit. In May of 2022, I think it was 2023, I got all of the people who I knew who sang with me inside, who were outside to sing with the choir I do here in Yellow Springs called the World House Choir. We had 9 singers with us, one woman and 8 men who had sung with me inside and performed together. And some of them did separate pieces in that concert. I love it, especially when I'm able to see people on the outside, see people get out that have sung with me and see the trajectory of their lives. And one particular person who played Hamilton is out and doing really well and has sung with the World House Choir on a regular basis, which is great. And I've had a couple other guys do that as well. Yeah, you take their stories, and you don't always know their stories. You don't always know their crime, obviously, as I said. But, these are people who, there's a man in the choir who was originally on death row, and he's been in for 52 years. And so, at a certain point, you ask yourself, how long is enough to accept the responsibility of your actions, right? And that's what I ask. I think 50 years is a lot of time. I think, as if we were to look to Europe, and I think many prisons in Europe, especially Norway, I'm thinking of, 20 years is maximum for most crimes. So these people are obviously known for the worst thing they've done. They've made bad decisions or one bad decision, and it follows them the rest of their lives. And it's not that they don't think they should be punished, because I think they know they should be. But then the part that gets them is that people don't see them as human. And that's the big thing. When I bring in the people like last week, the people I bring in see them as human, because they're hearing this beautiful music and seeing people work together and want to change their lives by coming together, doing things that are kind of contrary. In the prison situation, you have to watch out for yourself. It's very dog eat dog, or try and stay clean and separate. And so there's not a lot of opportunity to really be vulnerable together. And that's what singing is. I'm sure you know that. It's a vulnerable act. We are our instruments. And I do take it with me. The spirit of these people, though, is quite something. And I tell everybody I got hooked in 1990, and I guess it's the truth, because I've been doing it ever since.
I'm wondering what you have learned about doing this work, about sort of how to do it successfully, or potentially some mistakes that you've made along the way that you've learned from.
I've learned that, these are our institutions, right? These are places that we as a society have created. And I've learned that there are many better ways to take care of people who have harmed us and their communities than what we're doing right now. And I've learned that education, just like on the outside, education is a really valuable tool, and it's education, and especially arts, I'm in the arts, that provide people with tools. So it's a rehabilitative kind of thing. Education, I think Wilmington College, where I taught and got involved with all of this prison education, they did research that recidivism is reduced 42% with an AA degree. That's 2 years of an AA. So I've learned that, education is a liberator in so many ways, and it needs to be offered to everyone. For a while, you were only allowed to take educational courses if you were near the board, if you were near getting out. I learned that education is really valuable, and the arts are unbelievably valuable. Writing and drama and dance and, of course, music, all kinds of music. All of us need to be going into prisons more and making a way inside, and to change lives inside, and then it automatically touches you and changes your life. Have I made mistakes? Well, probably I have. And it usually is not reading a person who's in the choir quite right. And I've had some interesting conflicts, I would say. And then the beauty, though, is that most of them have had good outcomes, because I believe in communicating. I believe in being honest and being consistent. I should say that another thing that's really important to the men and the women, I have had a women's choir, a wonderful women's choir for about 5 years inside. Consistency. This is something that has not been in many of the people who I work with in their lives, consistency. And so I know that I have to show up and I want to show up, and it means something to them for me to show up.
Is there maybe one or two songs that you have consistently found work well in singing in prison?
Well, one is Melanie Demore's Standing Stone. We sang that just before we went on with our program on Wednesday and Thursday. Ella's song, always the chorus, We Who Believe in Freedom Cannot Rest, Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan. Another piece that she wrote that Dr. Barnwell, also of Sweet Honey in the Rock, We Are the Ones We've Been Waiting For. I can get that going with anybody, and the guys love it. What happened on this past week was I Know I've Been Changed. And the resonance of that piece, I Know I've Been Changed. But I would say, yeah, there are lots of songs that I love to use, and Sia Hamba, things like that, and then changing the words. So, yeah, the zipper chorus songs are really important. So I do a lot of that. Never Turning Back is another one that's really easily taught with a lot of zipper chorus, and that they write the lyrics that zip in.
Kathy, thank you so much for talking with me today. I think this work is so important and powerful and rewarding to share with people on the outside who don't understand much about prisons. It's such a almost secretive sort of world, and people who are like yourself, who are fortunate to go in, have these positive interactions, it makes a difference. So thank you very much for talking with me today.
Gosh, well, thank you for inviting me. It's been wonderful, and I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Mothers and daughters, let's go make history.
You've been listening to How Can I Keep From Singing? My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guest today has been Catherine Roma.
Brothers, come on, let's go make history. I'm talking about you and me. Let's go make history. Let's go make history.